I think this is kind of like pretty interesting here. Tesla supercharging slower than EA with the CCS adapter? Huh? It's possible that I actually charged faster here at EA than at a V3. Without a doubt, much faster than a V2 supercharger. And I'm not even talking about if you're force split. Wow, the games have changed, folks. I gotta look at the data. I can't wait. Welcome to another episode of Out of Spec Dave, where today I'm going to be testing out my brand new CCS adapter. This is the one from Tesla, and a month ago, I think, oh, actually, was it 3 months ago? It was 6 months ago. Kyle did a test on a device like this that was put together by a gentleman in the Ukraine, of all places. And I was fascinated with the fact that I could potentially charge my Tesla on a CCS network. And I've been waiting to kind of see how other people are thinking, what their feedback is on the actual adapter. But when Tesla added this unit to their website for only $250, I pulled the trigger. It just came yesterday, and I'm all excited to test this out. Now, I know there are a lot of videos out there already about this CCS adapter, but not a video from Out of Spec Dave. So fasten your seatbelts. Let's get into it, folks, because today I'm going to be testing out this CCS adapter the way I like to test things. So let's get into it. So it's a beautiful fall day here in southern Connecticut, and I'm out in my 2021 Tesla Model S Refresh. The car has around 25,000 miles. I just tipped over 25,000 miles. I bought it recently from CarMax, pre-owned, pre-loved, as we say, with around 22,000 miles on it. The car's been awesome. I've had a couple little things that I fixed on it, the door handle, and I had the yoke replaced, which is great. But I really am enjoying this car. And what's interesting is that I had purchased a 2018 Model S 100D, thinking that I could test out this CCS charger. But what's very interesting is that car did not support the CCS adapter. In other words, it needed to have an onboard ECU, electronic control unit, in order for it to work. And I didn't realize that. I made a bunch of mistakes with that car. One of them being charging, the other being the fact that I wouldn't be able to test out, the CCS network. In any event, some of you may remember the Chatamo adapter. I had bought one of these. I think it was $400, and from Tesla's website. And it was this big, bulky thing that you could actually plug into a Chatamo. And one of the reasons why I wanted it is because, to me, anything that you can do to, perhaps it's an insurance policy, when you're on a road trip, especially, look, Tesla Supercharger, we all know it. It's everywhere, right? Let's be honest. However, when I say everywhere, it's not everywhere. And also, this car does not come with free supercharging. Now, years ago, when I was buying the older model Teslas, whether it was a 3 or a Y or an S, they used to come with free supercharging, and this one doesn't. So I'm sitting there paying at the pump, and sometimes, depending on the pricing schedules that you see at Tesla, they could be upwards of 48 to 54 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, let's put this into layman's terms. This car has a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. So think of that like a 100-gallon gas tank. And if I get charged 50 cents or 48 cents for every kilowatt hour when I'm using the Tesla Supercharger, if I were to go from 0 to 100% full, I would then consume 100 kilowatt hours, which would be about $48. And that would give me anywhere between 300 and 350 miles of range, even though this car is rated for 405 EPA. A lot of the driving that I do is highway when I'm thinking about this car as a road tripper. So not a bad price. I would say that is probably maybe half of what it would cost gasoline wise, somewhere less, let's just say. When gasoline was at $5 a gallon, it was a heck of a lot less. But one of the things is with this CCS adapter, I'm now able to do is I can comparison shop, because the EA network itself is, I'm going to head north on the Merritt here, in New Canaan. You can actually shop for Electrify America stations where they charge, I believe it's 48 or 42 or 48 cents a kilowatt hour. I can't remember what their off the shelf or off the rack price is. But if you become a member of EA for only $4 a month, you can buy down that rate to 32 cents a kilowatt hour. So I want to have some fun comparison shopping for the first time. But before I comparison shop, I want to make sure that the speeds with which I can charge in the EA network or any of the others, there's an EVgo down in Florida that I want to check out. I think it's a 500 amp system. But you'll notice that this unit is so tiny compared to the giant that giant Chatamo adapter that I used to have that somehow Kyle took, and I've never seen it since. But that's all right, Kyle. That's a conversation for another day. But the reason why this adapter, this CCS adapter, is so small is because what it is all it's doing is it's taking the pins, if you will, from the CCS, which is AC and DC, and it's converting them, physically cross-connecting them to the actual Tesla connector. So it'll go from this to that physically. And then the car itself has to have an ECU on board in order to take that CCS energy, or the energy being delivered by the CCS, and make sure the car can actually put the energy into the battery. Whereas in the Chatamo adapter actually did that. So that was like having an onboard, or not even an onboard, but an ECU that was part of the adapter. So as a result of this unit relying on the ECU in the car, the cost comes down $250, and obviously they're making money on this thing. It's a solid unit, but it's not as if it's having to do anything fancy in terms of converting the energy and changing the protocols, because that's happening on the car itself. My understanding is that for the way that you can tell whether or not your car will support this CCS adapter is if you go into your menu on your Tesla and you go to software and you go to additional information about your software. I think it's called additional. Let me look at this 1 second. Release notes. Oh yeah, additional vehicle information. Then a little screen will pop up with a whole bunch of data, and it will say CCS adapter support. It's either enabled or not enabled. If it says enabled in your car, you're great. If it's not enabled, my understanding is that you'll be able to, at some point in 2023, you'll be able to go to Tesla and actually upgrade your car. So the car will have an upgraded ECU inside of it that will allow you to buy one of these CCS adapters. Now, the reason why this is such a smart thing is it's not just about the money, right? If you buy down the rate, if you're a big road tripper and you don't have free supercharging, the ability for you to have the flexibility to be able to charge at all of the additional CCS stations, which, let's be honest, everyone complains about Electrify America and you plug in and it doesn't work, and it's getting a lot better, folks. And so that's number one. Number two, they're not the only game in town. So there's a number of different charging systems or networks that are coming out, and we're only going to see more and more of that over the next few years. So the ability to be able to cross shop, yes, from a price standpoint, but here's the other thing. I took a trip with Kathy up to Maine recently, and a lot of the supercharging networks that were up there in the Northeast they weren't version 3 superchargers. They were only V2s, which means that you're only going to maximize 150 kilowatts in terms of the speed with which you're able to charge. And when you go to a a really busy V2, which happened to me a couple of times on that trip, what ends up happening is Tesla, they force split that 150 to cabinet A and cabinet B. So if you're on 1A or 1B, you're only getting 75 max. And so I was only pulling 72 max. So if I have a choice, forget about money for a second, if I have a choice as to whether or not I can charge at a Tesla Supercharger, first I'm going to look at, assuming this, now I got to test out this CCS adapter today, but assuming I get some decent speeds on a 350, and I probably should test it out on a 150 as well, but I'm going to test it out on a 350. Assuming that a V2 is crowded and it's force split, if this thing's pulling even 150 on a 350, which is what this unit, this little adapter is rated for, 150 continuous. I've heard people getting 200, and which is really good. So what I want to do is I want to precondition my battery to show up at an EA station, and this one EA station that I'm going to has Tesla Urban Superchargers, those 75 kilowatts. So I can actually put the destination in effect to precondition my battery. Now it's warm out today, it's 70 degrees, but I'm still going to precondition to make sure that the battery is in the optimal temperature. Because if I plug in and I'm pulling 200 kilowatts peak, I'm going to measure the curve. I'm going to map that curve against what I've got on a V3, which recently I put up a video on that. Then I'm not going to be necessarily comparison shopping from a price standpoint. I'm going to be comparison shopping based on how fast this I can actually pull energy from. So I'm excited here to see what this adapter can do for me on a 350 EA station. And look, optionality, I love it, right? Anything you can do to increase the number of potential charging spots where you can get energy from is, in my book, is not a good thing. It's a great thing. And having all the different choices is a tremendous value to me. So here's the game plan for today. What I'm gonna do is, I'm currently at a 19% state of charge. I'm gonna drive this car. Right now I'm on some local roads. The Merit's a mess. I don't know, they're doing construction on it. So, but I'm gonna go down to Stamford, I forget what they call it. There's a plaza down there and a Stop and Shop. And I'm gonna put in my destination. I wanna pull in less than 10% because I wanna measure the 10 to 80% charge. So I'm probably gonna pull in hopefully around 5 or 6% state of charge. So I gotta drive this car down from 19% down to 5 or 6%. And then I'm gonna plug into the 350 EA station down there. And I've got an EA app that I'll use in order to activate the charger. And then I'm gonna graph the curve. I'm gonna graph that charging curve, and I wanna compare that to what it was on a V3. Depending on that data, I may actually go back and, compare this car on a 150 versus the CCS. We'll see. I don't know. I'm gonna play with it, but I'm super excited. I love the word optionality, and today I own optionality with this little puppy right here. So anyway, I'm excited to start this little experiment, and we'll see what happens. Let's see, we got an ID4 plugged into a 150. The 350s. So you can see that what's interesting is over there, you can see all the Tesla destination chargers, but that is not my destination. My destination are the EAs right back over here. So let's see, I have to think about this. I've got, hopefully this, oh, I know what I can do. I can back in.
GPS signal lost.
I can back in to this station right over here and then plug in, because this has a 350. All right. Okay, here we are. We are charging on the 350 here. which is great. And let's see what we're pulling. 141 kilowatts. Okay, 142 at a 6% state of charge. So I do want to go in and film this charging curve so we can actually watch this. But this is exciting. This is the first time, and I'm happy with that. Charging 372 amps, 391 volts. Now that's interesting. I don't recall seeing that kind of information before, and it's still pulling 147 kilowatts. So that's great. Already up 3 kilowatts. 3%, I should say, 4%. And already added 4 kilowatt hours. So good stuff here. We'll keep this going. Okay, so just hit 80%. And what you can see is what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to actually stop charging on the app inside the car. And I'm also going to unlock the charging port. But this was an awesome charging curve. It's possible that I actually charged faster here at EA than at a V3. Without a doubt, much faster than a V2 supercharger. And I'm not even talking about if you're force split. Wow, the games have changed, folks. I gotta look at the data. I can't wait. I know that this has a lock on it, so. All right, so I just finished up my charging session here at EA, and yeah, there is a little, see that little tiny, right up there, that little metal or plastic thing is an actual lock for the car. And what I had to do is I had to go on to the app just to unlock the charging port, and then I was able to pull out the EA, the adapter, the CCS adapter. But I don't know, I'm super optimistic about the results here. I'm surprised. I got to graph the data and look at this. I mean, this curve was strong and very linear all the way through. There were no major drop-offs or anything like that. So I can't wait to go back in and chart these plot all these numbers, and then I'll do a summation back at the house later on. But wow, I think this is kind of like pretty interesting here. Tesla supercharging slower than EA with the CCS adapter? Huh?
Welcome back to Out of Spec Dave. I've crunched through all the numbers, and I was talking to Kyle earlier, and he had reminded me that he and Brandon Flash had put together a Out of Spec podcast where they had analyzed some data from a friend of theirs who has a Tesla Model S Plaid, and he was using a Tesla CCS adapter on a station where he had really revealed some interesting numbers. Now, the highest that I saw today on this, I think it's a Signet system, was 175 kilowatts, and I had 400 amps. Now, one of the things you'll see here on this screen that I'm showing right here is that this other person hit a charge rate of 250 kilowatts and 589 amps, which is higher than the rating that I really would have sort of anticipated anyone to be able to get. I don't believe we've seen the full charging curve, so how deep into the pack did that get? But today I'm going to be presenting to you a spreadsheet comparing my results today, which ramped up pretty nicely to 175, not to 250 or anything like that. But you can see that in this case, this guy was pulling 257 kilowatts now at 13% state of charge on I think it was a CCS adapter or a CCS station. I believe it was Electrify America, a Signet station. So, I mean, that's really some great results right there. That I know that Kyle and Brandon Flash were talking about it recently on an out of spec podcast. I did not achieve the same results there. So recently, I had mapped out 3 different charging curves with my new Tesla, new to me, my 21 Tesla Model S. This is the refresh model, the one with the yoke. And what was interesting about these curves is that, I started on 9/11, I started at 1%, and the time from 10% to 80% was 26 minutes. And you could see that that's this curve right here that went up and it sort of ramped down. Then on 10/2, I started at 7% state of charge. And you can see the different states of charge right over here where I started. And it ramped up very nicely, and then it came down again. And then the third charge that I had on the Model S on the V3, these were all on V3s, was on 10/8, started at 8%, and from 10% to 80% was 30 minutes. So today, when I charged on the CCS adapter and I didn't hit 250, I thought that it really wasn't going to be as good, but I was optimistic about the results here, which you can see. I actually charged from 10% to 80% on the CCS adapter in 29 minutes. And I thought to myself, well, how is that possible? And what you can see is that this charging curve, it ramped up basically to 175, very, very sort of in a very stable way, and it didn't fall off. Like, this fell off like sort of like a cliff. This kind of fell off, but it's hard to see this, but this red line, it consistently, from a state of charge of around 45%, it stays consistently above, not by a lot, but it definitely stays consistently above the charging curves of the others. And then above 76%, it really tapered quite nicely. And so the net result of this was a 10% to 80% of 29 minutes. Now, imagine if I was on one of those faster sort of, Signets, or I'm not sure which the brands of the charging stations, and it really doesn't matter what brand it is, the EV Go or what have you. But if you pull into a 350 kilowatt station that's rated at 500 amps, and the Tesla can actually pull even more than 500 amps for an extended period of time, unless the car really thermal throttles and the charging curve drops off dramatically because it overheats the battery. I'm really interested to play around with this to see if I can get some better results than this, because this charging session on 9/11 that I started at 1% from 10 to 80% at 26 minutes, I thought that was very good. Now, keep in mind, the EGMP platform cars I've consistently, repeatedly charged from 10 to 80% in 18 minutes. Granted, that's a 77.4 kilowatt hour battery pack versus this being a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. But listen, I'm very happy with this CCS charging curve, especially because I was only pulling, the 400 amps on that station at the Ridgeway 350 station in Stamford today. So look, I'm thrilled with this charging session. It was faster than one of the 3 V3 sessions that I had, and more importantly than that is that when you're out in the country and you got a Tesla and you have a choice of whether it's EA or ChargePoint or EVgo, definitely look at the pricing and start to comparison shop, because we're entering a whole new era here of consuming energy for electric vehicles. And while today it's nice that with a Tesla, with the CCS adapter, assuming you're enabled for it, you can actually shop the CCS network. It's just a matter of time where the CCS cars are going to be able to shop the Tesla networks, and there's going to be reciprocal sort of cross-pollination of these networks, and the VHS will end up equaling the Betamax, and I think that'll be a really good thing. But also, what you want to think about is the charging speeds. So keep in mind that everyone says, "Oh, the Tesla network's the best, the best." But if you pull into a V2 and you've got a force split situation where you're having to share a cabinet with another Tesla on a version 2, and you're only pulling 72 kilowatts, um, you know what? Take your CCS adapter, look online for on PlugShare, and find yourself a high speed CCS charging station and go plug in there. And then alternatively, if you pull into a Tesla supercharging station, like I did a couple weeks ago, just here in Stamford, Connecticut, and the place was jammed. There was a waiting line, and we don't typically see that here on the East Coast. But on the West Coast, if you see that, which I hear is more common, uh, you now have an option to be able to go and maybe go to an EA station as an example. Now, in my case today, what I did was I charged at a 350 and I charged at a maximum of 175. I think what I'm going to do is go back and charge at a 150, which are much more prevalent out there. Like today, I was on Long Island and I wanted to charge on a 350, and there really weren't any, at least within the vicinity where I was. They were all 4-station 150s. And so now, again, if there was a version 3 versus a version 2, I would go to the version 3 supercharger for sure. But all these factors are starting to come together. It's the economics of it, it's the speed of it, it's the game of it, right? And I really am enjoying having my new CCS adapter. It worked flawlessly. The only trick at the end was I couldn't get the thing out of the actual adapter out of the car, and then I realized, I have to go onto the app and click unlock, which is a good feature because listen, a $250 adapter, if you're in shopping or eating dinner and you're charging, it's a lot different than a $50, J1772 to Tesla adapter. So look, I'll leave it there. I'm thrilled with the results here. Is it faster than a V3? Well, in one case it was. In two cases it wasn't. But it's right up there, at least with the charging session that I had today. And I preheated the battery. I had it at an optimal temperature. But, and again, remember that these 3 charging curves you see over here, these were V3s. So if you're comparing it against the V2, guess what? CCS with that CCS adapter on a 150, especially if you're not force splitting at a Tesla supercharger, you're better off going to an EA and plug it into a 150. If you can find the 350, for sure, do that. And again, that video that Kyle and Brandon showed on Out of Spec podcast was really quite revealing. 592 amps, over 250. I think the guy pulled 257 kilowatts. Wow. Anyway, thanks for watching another episode of Out of Spec Dave, and have a great day. Take care now. Bye-bye.